When someone pulls away, our instinct is to chase. We argue, we plead, we try to explain ourselves into their heart. But here's the truth: when you argue with someone who's avoidant, you lose twice. First, because they retreat further. Second, because you hand over your power. The secret is not to chase them with words, but to hold your ground with actions. You don't regain control by convincing them. You regain control by showing them that your life, your energy, and your happiness do not collapse when they pull away. The avoidant thrives on distance. So instead of trying to close the gap, widen your own world. Step back, breathe, invest in yourself. Let silence do the heavy lifting, because silence is not weakness. It is strength wrapped in mystery. And here's the twist: when you stop arguing, when you stop pleading, when you stop trying to fix the unfixable, something magical happens. They notice, they feel the shift. They realize the dynamic has changed. And that's when you win back the only thing that ever really mattered: your control. Remember, you can't drag someone closer, but you can pull yourself higher. And from that place of strength, the right people are drawn back, not because you begged them to come, but because they couldn't help it. When you find yourself dealing with someone avoidant, the natural pull of your emotions will tell you to argue with their distance. It feels unfair, confusing, and even insulting that they can shut down or withdraw when you want connection the most. But here's what happens the moment you step into that argument: you lose. Not because you don't have valid points, not because your feelings aren't important, but because arguing with someone who thrives on space is like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips away. Think about it. An avoidant person is wired to see closeness as a threat. When you argue, even if your words come from love, they hear pressure, they hear demands. They hear an attempt to close the gap they've deliberately created. So instead of drawing them nearer, your argument confirms their belief that closeness equals danger, equals loss of freedom, equals suffocation. The more passionately you try to convince them to stay, the more urgently they feel the need to escape. It's not that your feelings are wrong. It's not that you shouldn't want connection, but the battlefield you've chosen, the battlefield of arguing, is one you cannot win. You could have the sharpest logic, the most heartfelt pleas, the most persuasive reasoning, and yet every word pushes the avoidant further into retreat. Imagine knocking on a door that someone has locked from the inside. The louder you pound, the more determined they are not to open it. That's the trap of arguing with an avoidant. And here's the subtle danger: you also lose yourself in the process. Every time you argue with their distance, you hand them the script to your emotions. You make their withdrawal the center of your world. You place your peace of mind in their hands. Suddenly, your entire sense of stability is dependent on how quickly they come back, how soon they reply, how willing they are to reassure you. And when they don't, frustration rises, panic builds, and you argue harder. That cycle doesn't just push them away, it drains your own sense of power. The truth is, avoiding the argument isn't about letting them win. It's about refusing to play a game that keeps you stuck. It's recognizing that arguing with distance only multiplies it. Instead of begging for the connection, your strength lies in stepping back, in showing with your actions that you don't collapse in the silence. Because the moment you stop arguing, you stop feeding the very dynamic that keeps you trapped. And that is when the power begins to shift. When someone pulls away, it is tempting to plead for closeness. You feel the sting of rejection, the panic of losing them, and every fiber of your body wants to bridge that gap by asking for reassurance. You want to hear them say, "I'm still here," or "I still care." But here's the hidden cost. Pleading doesn't draw them closer, it pushes them further away, and more importantly, it chips away at the very thing that makes you attractive in the first place: your self-respect. Pleading places you in the role of someone asking for scraps. It signals that their presence is worth more than your dignity. And while you might not see it in the heat of the moment, every time you beg for love, you unconsciously communicate that you are willing to shrink yourself to keep them. The avoidant isn't inspired by this. It reinforces their instinct to stay distant. Because if they already fear that closeness will trap them, your pleading feels like proof that being with you means they will lose all their space. Think about the energy of pleading. It says, you are in control. You get to decide if I feel good or broken today. You hold the power. And in that moment, you teach the other person that they don't need to show up differently because you will chase them regardless. This doesn't just hurt your influence in the relationship, it reshapes the entire dynamic so that you become the pursuer and they become the one who decides how much connection exists between you. That imbalance is not love, it's dependency disguised as devotion. When you stop pleading, you reclaim your self-worth. You send a subtle but powerful message: I desire closeness, but I don't require your validation to be whole. That stance creates an entirely different energy. Instead of being the person who clings, you become the person who is centered, grounded, and capable of holding your own. Ironically, that is the kind of energy that begins to attract someone back, not because you force them to, but because your independence makes them feel safe. It's important to remember that real closeness cannot be begged for. It cannot be demanded, argued into existence, or pulled out of someone against their will. Genuine connection grows when both people choose it freely. Pleading robs the moment of freedom, it suffocates. But when you resist the urge to beg for reassurance, you restore balance. You remind yourself that your value does not come from their willingness to stay. It comes from how deeply you honor yourself, even when they choose to step away. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people see it as a void, as absence, as weakness. When someone avoids you or pulls away, silence can feel unbearable, almost like punishment. That's why the instinct is to fill the space with words, explanations, apologies, or arguments. But silence, when used with intention, is one of the most powerful tools you have to rebalance a dynamic with someone who thrives on distance. It doesn't mean ignoring or pretending to be indifferent. It means choosing not to react in a way that costs you your dignity. When you remain silent instead of chasing, you create a different kind of energy. Silence says, I am not desperate. I am not going to exhaust myself trying to convince you of my worth. I can stand on my own. This is not a performance for the other person. It's a declaration to yourself that you are strong enough to resist the urge to plead or argue. Silence communicates boundaries without a single word. It forces the other person to experience what life feels like when you're not constantly filling the gap for them. For the avoidant, who expects pressure when they distance themselves, silence is disarming. They anticipate pursuit, they anticipate questions, they anticipate explanations. But when none of that comes, when you stay grounded in stillness, it breaks the pattern. Instead of reinforcing their fears, you let them sit with the space they've created. That space becomes their responsibility to close, not yours. And often in that silence, curiosity is born. They begin to wonder why you didn't react the way they expected. They start to feel the shift in control. The beauty of silence is that it cannot be manipulated. Words can be twisted, arguments can spiral, pleading can be dismissed, but silence stands firm. It carries weight precisely because it doesn't chase. It creates mystery, and mystery is magnetic. When you don't explain yourself endlessly, when you don't rush to close the gap, you give the other person the opportunity to feel the distance and decide what it means for them. This isn't about playing games, it's about strength. It's about recognizing that chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught erodes your power. Silence is the opposite of chasing. It's self-respect made visible. And when you practice it, not only does it shift how the other person sees you, it shifts how you see yourself. It proves that you are capable of holding space, of sitting in discomfort, and of refusing to sacrifice your value just to close the distance someone else created. When someone withdraws, the temptation is to direct all your energy toward them, trying to decode their silence, worrying about what they're thinking, or strategizing how to pull them closer again. But pouring that much attention into another person only leaves you emptier. It's like watering a plant that refuses to grow while your own garden slowly dries up. Instead of chasing, the wiser move is to take that same energy and invest it in yourself. Because the more you strengthen your own life, the less dependent you become on someone else's behavior to feel whole. Investing in yourself doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means realizing that your happiness cannot hinge on one person's willingness to meet you where you are. It means filling your days with pursuits that energize you, spending time with friends who uplift you, diving into projects that excite you, taking care of your body, exploring hobbies that light you up. When you do this, you shift your focus from scarcity, what you think you've lost, to abundance, what you are actively creating. This shift changes how you show up. Instead of approaching the relationship from a place of neediness, you begin to radiate fullness. People feel that difference. Someone avoidant expects you to collapse in their absence, to chase them in desperation, to make their distance the center of your universe. But when you use that same space to grow, you send a message without speaking. I want connection, but I don't require your presence to feel alive. That independence is not only attractive, it's stabilizing. And here's what's fascinating when you redirect your energy into yourself. You stop reinforcing the very behavior that unsettled you. Chasing and pleading reward withdrawal. They teach the other person that they can retreat whenever they want, and you'll do the heavy lifting to close the gap. But when you take that energy back, you rewrite the script. You show that their distance doesn't define you, and in doing so, you shift the dynamic entirely. Even if they don't come closer, you've already won. Because you've proven to yourself that your world doesn't shrink when someone pulls away. It expands. You stop making their actions the centerpiece of your emotional life, and instead you build a foundation so strong that no one's withdrawal can shake it. That is the real power of investing in yourself. It not only restores balance in the relationship, it restores balance within you. Control in relationships is often misunderstood. Many think it comes from persuading someone, winning arguments, or forcing closeness, but real control has nothing to do with changing another person's behavior. It comes from mastering your own reactions. When you're dealing with someone avoidant, the most dangerous trap is letting their push and pull dictate your every move. The moment you react impulsively, arguing, pleading, over-explaining, you hand over the steering wheel. Your emotions become a puppet of their distance. Self-mastery is how you take that control back. Self-mastery begins with awareness. You have to notice the urge to chase before it consumes you. That tightness in your chest when they don't reply, the flood of anxious thoughts when they go quiet. That is the moment of choice. Most people rush to soothe the discomfort by reaching out, trying to force a resolution. But mastery is choosing stillness instead. It's saying, I feel the pull to react, but I will not abandon my dignity in the process. This restraint is not suppression. It is strength. It is reminding yourself that your emotions belong to you, not to their behavior. When you stop reacting impulsively, you create space. That space is where your power lies. Instead of running after them, you hold your ground. Instead of needing answers right now, you give time the chance to do its work. From the outside, it may look like patience, but on the inside, it is control. You are teaching yourself that your peace is not negotiable, that you don't collapse simply because someone else is uncertain. Ironically, the less you react, the more influence you actually gain. People are drawn to those who can remain centered under pressure. If every time someone pulls away you explode with fear, you become predictable, and predictability in this form creates imbalance. They know they control your state. But when you respond with calmness, when you show that your life continues with or without their reassurance, you disrupt the pattern. They no longer feel the same power over you, and that shift often sparks respect, sometimes even curiosity. The heart of reclaiming control is not about them, it's about you. It's about learning that mastery over yourself is what keeps you free, regardless of how another person behaves. You can't control whether someone avoids closeness. You can't control how quickly they return, but you can control how you show up, how you hold yourself, and how much of your identity you hand over. And when you choose self-mastery, you stop chasing control outside of you and realize it has always been within you. So when it comes to the avoidant, remember this: arguing only fuels their distance, pleading only strips away your power, and chasing only reinforces the very dynamic you're trying to escape. The real shift happens when you step back, when you let silence speak louder than words, when you pour your energy into your own growth, and when you master your responses instead of handing them over. That is where true control lies, not in changing someone else, but in elevating yourself. Because the truth is, the moment you stop chasing, you stop losing. And the moment you stop pleading, you start winning back the only thing that was ever yours to begin with: your self-respect, your strength, and your ability to choose how you show up in love. From that place, you don't just change the relationship, you change yourself. And that change will ripple into every connection you'll ever have. Thank you for giving me your time and attention today. I hope these words remind you that your power has never left you. It's simply waiting for you to claim it again. Stay strong, stay centered, and keep choosing yourself first. Goodbye, and thank you.